Because I'm going to say what he's saying. He talked about waiting, he talked about a mountain, and he talked about burning. All that's within here.
Amen.
But the message that I'm going to share today, I actually got on January 29th. But when I look at the foundation of what's been spoken from now till then, again, all I can say is set up. In January and February, Pastor Kathy was speaking on a year to build. And one thing that she said, and I quote, "Everyone doesn't have the same assignment, but we all have a responsibility to fulfill our assignment."
Amen.
Last week, Elder Beth spoke on the apostolic purpose. And at the end of her charge, because that's really what it was, she prayed for us. And part of her prayer, she said, and I quote, "I pray that the Holy Spirit will breathe new life upon their gifting and their purpose. Father, let it become a surge, a reinvigoration to bring forth a passion, a thirst, and a hunger." She said, "Father, I pray now that you will prepare them and position them and give them a heart to be greater, to be distributors of what's been deposited." That was a powerful prayer of activation for us. And as I pondered the prayer and the message, I understood why what he gave me in January lines right up with today. So today I'll be ministering on divine dealings. Now, when I first heard the Lord speak this to me, I don't think I'd ever heard those two words put together. So I began to meditate on it throughout the day, and the first thing that I did was I looked up what it meant to deal, or deal or dealings. And to deal means to be made, to be produced, to be offered, to be observed, to be used, to be pressed, to be squeezed. Those are just a few definitions. Some of y'all already squirming. But it shows us just from those few definitions alone that dealings have a purpose. Some further definitions, it means to accomplish, to advance, to appoint, to bring forth, to exercise, to govern, to perform, to prepare, to sacrifice. I'm not even going to look up. To serve. But it also means to be a warrior. And I began to think to myself, who in the Bible had a divine dealing? And the first person I thought about was the woman at the well. And we find out about her in John chapter 4. I love it. But what I love the most about that scripture is Jesus says, "I must needs go to Samaria." So it let us know that his going to that particular place was not a coincidence or an accident. But he dealt with a woman who had a reputation. But none of that stopped him from talking to her, from healing her, or even delivering her. But she shows us something. She shows us how one dealing with God can not only transform you, but even people connected to you. She really is the first evangelist. She dropped that pot, took off, and told everybody, "Come see a man." But this is the thing. When she went to that well, she chose to sit at the well. Some of us need to have a seat at the well. Naomi and Ruth. In Ruth 1:8, it says, and Naomi said to her two daughter-in-laws, go return each one to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with me. But just a little bit further, verse 13, see, this same woman who has so much hope for them now says, for it grieves me very much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Some of the dealings of the Lord can be seen as punishment, but it can also be positioning. Naomi was unaware that she will be part of the lineage of Jesus. But her husband leaving and having her go to Moab positioned her to bring back Ruth, who otherwise would have never met Boaz. She experienced a loss, but also a greater gain than she could have imagined. So for those of you who are seeing your dealings as punishment, there might be a whole nother perspective that you are not yet aware of. But the one that struck me the most was Moses. He had already been mentioned today. But we're going to go back to his beginning in Exodus chapter 3. And it says, now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. So he looked and beheld the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. I know it's a familiar scripture, but I'm going to pull some things out of it that I hadn't seen before. The first thing I want you to notice is that if he's leading a flock, that represents he's been doing something for quite some time because the sheep are following him. That's right. Without a problem. They know him. They're familiar with him. But sometimes God will divinely burn something in your familiar to get your attention. Though he didn't know what it was, he responded. He didn't ignore. How many of us have walked past the bush and avoided the burning? Some things are on fire to get our attention to tune in to him. They aren't to distract, but to direct. Since you've been doing that same thing for some time, he has to do something out of the ordinary so that you might turn aside and look. Now this word looked is not just, I'm looking at you, you looking at me. No, that's not what that is. Look means to inspect. It means to perceive. It means to consider. It means to regard. It means to observe. It means to give attention to distinguish, to gaze, to take heed. These aren't just words. These are postures and positions that we can operate in. Verse 3. Then Moses said, I will turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. That I will represents it was a personal decision. He said what he would do, and he did what he said. Now the bush, I looked it up, it means thorny. But God spoke from something that was thorny to get his attention. Verse 4, So when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. When God observed that Moses paid attention to what he gave attention to, that's when he spoke. That's when he began to commission. That's when he began to appoint. That's when Moses began to understand that he was chosen. But it took Moses turning aside to cause the voice of the Lord to then be released. Again, verse 4 says, so when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush. God didn't call, God didn't speak until Moses responded. Last week I was so blessed when many of you responded to the altar call. What we have to understand is that God knows what your bush is. He knows what your thorns are. He knows what your pain is, but yet he still desires to speak.
That's good.
Know that God is watching, but for many of us, he's also waiting. In the midst, that means from between something, in the middle of something, through something, from among something. So in the middle of something thorny, in the middle of something sticky, in the middle of something painful, in the middle of something hurtful, he commissioned, he appointed, and he chose. When the Lord saw that he turned away from the flock to look, God called him from the midst of the bush. So what is your flock? What are you leading? Because everybody in here is leading something. Whether it's your family, whether it's your business, whether it's your marriage, we're all leading something. But even in our leading, there comes a time where we have to turn aside. He turned aside from what he was leading to encounter the leader. He turned away from watching so he could then begin seeing. He turned away from the 99 so he could become the one.
Amen. That's good. Amen.
He turned, he looked, then he said. Now another version of this verse says, when the Lord saw Moses coming closer. Y'all hear this thing? Been singing it all day. He called him from the middle of the bush. Another verse says, once the Eternal One saw Moses approach to observe more closely, then he called out. He called out from within the flame. He spoke from within the circumstance. He speaks from within the trial. He speaks from within the test. God wrapped his voice in something uncommon. God wrapped his voice in something unfamiliar. God wrapped his voice in something peculiar. God wrapped his voice in something that was burning, but not consumed. What has God wrapped his voice in your life in that he's trying to use to get your attention? That he's trying to use to bring you to the place of divine dealings.
Hallelujah. Yes.
Now we can posture ourselves for divine dealings. We do it real well here on Sunday mornings. Through the word, through worship, but we can't limit divine dealings dealings for 2 hours on a Sunday. I have something that I do sometimes throughout the year where I literally have a alarm on my phone called Dad Time. And when that alarm goes off, everything is shut down. Because Sunday morning is not going to be enough.
Amen.
What the Lord shared with me is He's not just looking for worshipers, He's looking for waiters. Those who will wait in His presence. Those who will still themselves to hear His voice. He's not just looking for those who will listen, He's looking for those who will linger. Those who will linger in His presence. Those who will linger in His word. Those who will not be in a rush when He begins to speak, but will be attentive. This is not a season of rushing. This is a season of stillness. What we have to remember, and I think that we forget this, Moses was somebody who was trained in the king's palace. But he ran away. And the burning bush actually became an altar for Moses. The burning bush became a place of assignment for Moses. The burning bush became a place of reactivation of his apostolic purpose. The burning bush became a place of destiny. The burning bush, what Moses thought, all that training, all that knowledge, all the things Moses thought was dead, was reactivated at the bush.
Amen.
The things that Moses thought was useless, even some of the stuff he had forgotten about, the skill, the acumen, the knowledge, all got reactivated at the bush. The bush, thank you, my brother, was an awakening place for Moses. And a bush can be an awakening place for us. I said it, but I'm saying it again. The bush provided a place where Moses' apostolic purpose was given. And we learned last week that the apostolic purpose is defined as the strategical will of God sent to invade, to reform, to build, to empower, and to cause a transformational shift of influence in the earth realm. Did not Moses do all of that? And aren't we called to do the same?
Yeah.
Divine dealings happen when we come closer. Divine dealings happen when we choose to do that which is uncomfortable. Again, it didn't say this happened in the valley. It said it happened in a mountain. Which means it's something that he had to ascend to. It did not just come to him. There's a prophet in Australia that I listen to, and she released a word last week that I felt lined up with this message. And the prophetic word that she released said this: inquire of me the new perspective and the missing pieces to be revealed. Be intentional in your inquiring, for in the inquiring you shall acquire that which I have for you. Do not be locked into one perspective, but enter in the higher perspective through your surrender, which will bring healing, unprecedented joy, freedom, and breakthrough. The revelation of another perspective is your trajectory to increase greater as you ride on the winds of my spirit and vision. Moses, for 40 years, had been tending sheep. His perspective of life probably was very limited at that moment. But when he had a divine dealing, his whole perspective of everything he went through made even more sense. And I personally believe that even though there is a lot going on in many of our lives, there is this wooing, there is this calling, there is this commissioning that God is repeating. I need you to come closer. I need you to come higher. I need you to come deeper so I can take you further. Amen. At the beginning of the year, when I released the word of the Lord, the crux of what the Lord gave me was a mandate to mature. A part of maturing is going to the mountain. A part of maturing is knowing that it's okay to step aside for a moment to get instructions, to get direction, to get healing, to get deliverance, so you can be whole for this next part of the journey. I really believe that the 40 years that Moses was on the backside, God was dealing with his character. Because y'all know he killed somebody before he ran. And that anger could not be there when he faced Pharaoh.
That's right.
He would have messed it all up if he operated from that place. And I really believe for everything that's been deposited in us and everything that's been deposited in this house, for it to work at the measure and the fullness that God desires, there's some stuff that he has to address on the mountain. But the mountain was a secret place. It was Moses and it was God. He didn't blast him. He didn't put him on Front Street. No, when he got to the mountain, they talked face to face. And the beauty is, Moses loved it so much, he was like, we ain't going to do this one time. We're going to do this again. And him doing it again and again and again caused him not just to be a servant, but it caused him to become a friend. And we say terms, I'm a friend of God, but friend requires communication. And once a week is not. I'm serious. Because for the mandate, the weight that rests on this house, it's going to require a lot more as individuals to then become a unit and a whole. Now, they just sang the song prophetically, You Are My One Desire. And that's really where God is calling us back to. Because life has a way to have our eyes, our lives, our emotions, our feelings going every single way. But I really believe that God is calling many of us to the secret place. He's calling us to time dedicated to Him. Again, not just on Sunday. Because He desires to encounter us. Mind you, let me repeat it. It said God saw Moses. So He was watching. He was waiting. He was expecting. He was anticipating this moment with Moses. And you mean to tell me that He's not watching? He's not waiting? He's not anticipating divine moments with us.
Amen.
It's the joy of his heart. It's the joy of his heart when his people are willing to step aside, to turn aside for him and him alone. Psalms 91:1 says, I'm so sorry I didn't give y'all the scriptures. My bad. It says, he who dwells, not he who runs, not he who visits, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall remain stable and fixed under the shadow of the Almighty. In Matthew 6:6, the first part, it says, but you, when you pray, go into your room, and when you have shut the door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place. We can search for him in so many places, but the secret place is where he abides. And the secret place is something that you have to ascend to. It's something that you have to desire. It's something that you have to hunger for. It's something that you have to thirst for. It's something that you seek for. But guess what? You find what you're seeking. Amen. Divine dealings. The purpose, or some of the purpose of divine dealings, is to activate. Sometimes we just want people to lay hands. Be like, okay, they can keep laying hands, but ain't nothing going to be activated till you come to me. Right. They're vessels. I'm the source. You want healing? It can come by touch. But it comes straight from him too. See, I really believe that God is trying to pull us to the secret place so we know our strength, our source, our power, our might. Everything comes from him. Though he does use people, they can't get in the way of him. The secret place is where you get charged. Divine dealings is where you get filled. And some things are only disclosed in private. Yeah. Do not despise the dealings of the Lord. Embrace them wholeheartedly. Now, when I did this message, the Lord began to speak to me briefly, and one thing that he had me write and that I will share with you right now is this. He said, this is the hour that my divine dealings are coming upon my people. Some of it is to correct. Some of it is to protect. Some of it is to direct. But none of it is to be resisted or rejected. On February 25th, I woke up hearing some lyrics. I don't know if that happened to anybody else, but sometimes I wake up hearing lyrics. And I woke up hearing some lyrics. And when I heard the lyrics to the song, I text myself, and then I went to YouTube to look it up to see if it was actually a song. And it was. And